Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. Today we have a brand new set of great stories for you to enjoy, so sit comfortably, and here we go. A unique way to share your money among your heirs in a way that's actually fair. This story is the story of a good friend of mine's grandfather and how he dealt with his inheritance in a very unique way. He had two sons, and each of them also had two sons. In the last half year of his life, my friend and me visited him every morning and every evening. You see, he didn't want to go into a retirement home, and apart from getting ready in the morning and in the evening, he really didn't need any help. Now, I need to explain something real quick. Back in the day, we still have mandatory service in the Army for 12 months, but there were several ways around it. I'll only explain the most common way, since it's connected to our story. You see, instead of going into the Army, you could say that you refused to go to the Army for ethical reasons, which was really just a formality. You simply wrote a one-page essay why you think being in the Army would violate your personal ethics, and they pretty much had to accept it. But that meant you had to go into civil service. Civil service could be any kind of job that, in a wider sense, is a service to society. So these jobs ranged from kindergarten to retirement homes and anything in between, like hospitals, homes for the physically or mentally disabled, Meals on Wheels, pretty much anything you can imagine. You'd be paid for that time the same amount of money you'd get in the Army and had the right to certain perks like a free room, health insurance, work clothes, etc., the same stuff any soldier gets. Plus, since soldiers get free food, you either get free food or a food allowance. I did my time in a retirement home, and it was an awesome experience. I think a job like that really widens your horizon as a young, arrogant crap and really matures you and shows you what's actually important in life. Back to the story. I was just done with my time in the retirement home, and for 1 year, simply wanted to get a job to make some money. Then one of my best friends comes to me and tells me he needs my help. His grandpa can no longer do everything by himself, but really only needs help in the morning to get ready and in the evening. Since I learned how to do this from real professionals, he asks me to show him. So his grandpa doesn't yet have to go into a retirement home. He later admitted Grandpa said he'd rather kill himself than go into a nursing home, and he seemed really serious about it. He didn't tell me at the time since he didn't want to pressure me into helping like that, which I really appreciated. He was one of my best friends, and I really liked his grandpa. When I was younger, I did not have a grandpa, but when we visited him all the time, I became his unofficial fifth grandson, so of course I said yes. The original plan was to show him for 2 to 3 weeks and then observe him for another 2 to 3 weeks, then he would do it all on his own. But we ended up doing it together for over half a year. Then Grandpa had a stroke and died within 2 days in the hospital. 2 days later, my friend asked me to come with him to the lawyer where the list would be read. His grandfather had specifically asked that his will should be read the day before he gets buried, which is quite unusual, but not illegal as such. I asked why he wanted me there, and he told me the lawyer had officially invited me since Grandpa had left me something as a thank you for my service. I was a bit embarrassed, but also happy that Grandpa had thought so highly of my service he even put me in his last will. Now, my friend's dad is an entitled a-hole, and the same goes for his uncle. We arrived there and went into a room. My friend is F. You get 3 guesses who me is. Entitled dad is ED, and entitled uncle is EU. ED, to me. Why the hell are you here? I know that dad called you in jest his 5th grandkid, but this is for real family. EU. I bet the little gold digger hoped he'd get some money in the will. Me. I was asked to be here by the lawyer. Take it up with him. I have no idea why I'm here. ED. If you pulled something to get his money, I'll sue you so hard, even your kids will still need lawyers. F. Show some respect and stop shouting. I know you two didn't really give a crap about your dad, but at least show a minimum of respect. EU. How dare you talk like that to your elders, you little crap? F. You two get exactly as much respect from me as you showed your father. None. He really shouted the last word, and it finally shut the two up. So we sat down and still had to wait for the other 2 grandkids to arrive. The 2 sat right behind us, and what they talked about really made my blood boil. Apparently, they'd both gotten new cars, new jewelry for the wives, and had planned a huge holiday. All that was paid for by credit, and they planned to pay for it with the inheritance. None of them even said a word about missing him or being sad that he died. Nothing. Only me, and money, 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 money. They seemed to be in competition to who could spend the inheritance faster the way they planned away the money. Then finally, we were all there and the lawyer read out a short letter. What I tell you here is a much shortened version, but the real thing was several pages long. Boils down to this. In recent years, I more and more realized that some people in my family cared a lot more about me than others. I am especially disappointed in my two sons, but I wanted to be really fair and not biased, so I came up with a point system. Letter/phone call, 1 point, plus 1 if it's extra long. Visit, 2 points per hour plus 1 point per hour of travel to me and back. Helping me out with something, 3 points per hour. This is the final result over the last 3 years of my life. ED, 8 points. EU, 10 points. EU Kid 1, 150 points. EU Kid 2, 133 points. F Brother, 288 points. F, 7,341 points. Me, 5,883 points. My lawyer has already liquidated most of my assets except the house. Once it's sold, the money will be divided by the points, so we know what each point is worth, and then every person gets a share of the money according to his points. For about a minute, you could hear a pin drop. Then both ED and EU started shouting at the same time that they knew we would have pulled something and this would never stand. Of course, they tried to sue, EU as kids and ED together, but they lost, and there was a secret clause. Not really secret, it was simply not read to us that day, so nobody realized it was in there since we all assumed everything was read to us on that day by the lawyer. Anyway, there was a clause in the will that if someone sued against the will, he loses his share of the inheritance. It took nearly 3 years until all the lawsuits were over. I was blown away when we finally got the money. I'm not naming a sum, but it was way more than I felt comfortable accepting, so I wanted to give at least some of it to the other 3 grandkids. But my friend finally convinced me to accept by saying to me, "You cared for him when he needed it, without expecting anything for it, which makes you 10 times more his family than any of those efforts. They got what they deserved." I'm shocked that Dad and Uncle had such low points over 3 years. Glad Grandpa kept his wits right until the end. And our second story. Aggressively speed through a residential neighborhood? Now your car is wrecked, and it's your fault, dumb bubba. So this was quite a few years ago. One day my kids were skating in a quarter pipe when this truck comes around the corner with a bubba driving, and he sees my daughter come off the quarter pipe, and instead of slowing down, he floors it and rips past my house, still accelerating while yelling something about, "Keep out of the road, effers." I yelled also, "Slow down." The following weekend, I'm out mowing my lawn, and I see the guy coming, so I walk to the edge and try to wave him down to talk, and Bubba floors it again, laughing like a maniac as he goes flying by with his engine redlining. This guy's a nut. So I go to a hardware store and picked up 3 of those 3-foot orange safety cones, and I put a sign on each one of them. Slow down, residential neighborhood, kids at play. A few days later, I come outside and find the cones have been run over. I already know who done it. I'm pretty PO'd. Like, really angry. And in that anger, I came up with my most brilliant plan. I went to the hardware store and purchased 3 new cones, along with cement and steel rebar. I filled those with rebar and cement and let them set. After the cones were ready, I put them back out in the side of the street by my house with the same 3 signs as before. It didn't take long. 2 days later, I'm in my garage tinkering, and I hear that damn truck engine revving up as the bubba goes pedal to the metal. I look up just in time to see his truck steer towards the shoulder to run over the cones. Damn, it was a beautiful sight, like none I've ever seen before. He hit the first cone with his bumper, and the cone fell forward and rotated the base up towards his engine block, and it actually lifted the front of his truck upwards. As his front passenger wheels made a direct connection with the second cone, it launched his truck up even higher in the air. The third cone also made a direct hit on his right tire suspension as his truck came down to a screeching halt. There were fluids running out from under his truck, and his passenger tire was angled inwards at a 90-degree angle. Bubba was PO'd and started screaming about how I'd wrecked his truck and how I'm going to pay. I yelled back and said, "Well then, let's call the cops and get them out here to make a report, and you can tell them how you were racing down the road and intentionally ran over the safety cones. Or I can call you a tow truck. Which'll it be?" We called a tow truck. I never did see Bubba drive down my street anymore after that incident. I was worried he'd try to get revenge, but nothing ever happened, and we moved out a couple years later. And our last story. Make him repaint for no reason? You'll love the result. My friend had a long-term lease on a home, 5 years, which stipulated that he has to repaint every room the day he moved out. So he found a popular neutral paint color, hired a handyman, and had the place freshly painted the day before his moving truck showed up. Well, the landlord showed up, waving their contract, yelling, the wording said the day he moved out, not the day before. The landlord was convinced that the movers would scuff up the walls. He wanted the house left pristine. He really was ready to take the case to court. My friend was crushed. Between painting, moving, and the deposit on his new place, he had no money to repaint or to go to court. I was furious with the landlord. I went to the house and saw the paint job was fine, not scuffed. My friend and I met that night at the old house. Per his contract, we repainted every wall solid black. We even did some ceilings. Would have done them all if we had time. I don't know if it's just me. I have a fascination with hidden images. I took clear glow-in-the-dark paint and illustrated demons in the closet walls and in shadowy corners. They were all pretty shadowy by the time we left. We left a copy of the contract for the landlord, walls freshly painted the day he left. He never specified the color. We also had before and after photos printed out. Edit. This was over 10 years ago, and there was no fallout. The same letter of the law mentality that would have allowed the landlord to take the renter to court also allowed us to get away with this. The glow-in-the-dark paint was fun, but it didn't work very well, so the pictures are just a really ugly black apartment. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.